All right, let's dive into ancient Egypt, specifically their obsession with eternal life. Now, it wasn't just about, avoiding death. It was about preserving everything, their identity, their legacy for, like, all time.
It's interesting. They didn't fear death so much as saw it as a transition point, almost like a doorway into a continuation of life, but with a bit of a
Not a
twist.
twist. Okay, you got my attention. Tell me more.
So picture this. The ancient Egyptians saw the afterlife as like a mirror of life on Earth, bountiful fields, rivers, just like the Nile Valley. But the thing is, your status, your identity from your previous life, super important, like really important.
So even in the afterlife, no fresh start. You bring all your baggage with you.
Seems that way. They believed your social standing, your possessions, even your job, they could all follow you into eternity. That explains why they were so focused on preserving, well, everything about themselves.
Fascinating and a little bit scary. Did everyone get into this afterlife paradise, or was there a selection process?
Not everyone got a free pass. Egyptians believed the soul had three parts: the Ka, the Ba, and the Ak.
3 parts to the soul. Okay, I'm guessing each one was pretty important in the afterlife, right?
Absolutely. The Ka was your life force, the Ba, your personality, and the Ak was kind of like the transformed, eternal version of your soul. And here's the kicker. All three had to be perfectly preserved and then reunited for you to achieve eternal life.
Wow, a cosmic puzzle with some pretty high stakes. So how did they go about making sure their Ka, Ba, and Ak were, like, ready for the afterlife?
Well, this is where things get interesting. This is where we have to bring in the gods. Osiris, Anubis, Ra, Ma'at, to name a few.
Right. The Egyptian pantheon. Let's start with Osiris, god of the underworld, right?
That's him. Osiris, the god of the dead, ruled the underworld. But what made him truly important in their beliefs was his own story, actually. He experienced death and then resurrection. He became a symbol of rebirth.
So there's hope for everyone, even if you meet a tragic end like Osiris. What about Anubis, the one with the jackal head?
Right, Anubis. He was the god of mummification. So his job was to prepare the dead for the afterlife, which tells you how important mummification was in their belief system. It wasn't just preserving the body, it was providing a way for the Ka and Ba to come back.
That makes sense. Without a body, those soul parts wouldn't have anywhere to go. Now, Ra, he was the sun god. How did he fit into all of this?
Think about Ra's journey. Every night he goes down into the underworld, right? Battles darkness and then emerges victoriously each morning. That cycle, that was mirrored in their concept of death and rebirth, like a core principle of eternal life.
So even the gods followed this cycle. That really shows how important this idea was to them. Okay, what about Mahat, the one with the feather? I know she's important later on.
You're right, she is. Mahat was the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order, you could say. Think of her as like the embodiment of living a virtuous life that was essential for achieving immortality. She's the ultimate judge.
No pressure then. Living your life knowing that Ma'at is watching, always upholding truth and justice.
Definitely adds a layer of accountability, you could say. But getting to the afterlife, that was no easy feat, even with Matt on your side.
You're talking about the Duat, right? The Egyptian underworld. Sounds less like a relaxing stroll and more like an obstacle course.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Imagine fire-breathing monsters, rivers of fire, lakes filled with knives, a dangerous journey, full of challenges.
Yikes. They really had to work to get to paradise. How did they prepare for something like that?
Well, they had a guidebook, you could say. The Book of the Dead, a collection of spells, prayers, instructions designed to help them overcome all those obstacles.
So like their Lonely Planet Guide to the Underworld, with tips on avoiding monster attacks and how to navigate those fiery rivers.
Precisely. Incredibly specific instructions, from spells to transform into a bird to how to appease crocodile gods, even how to properly address each deity you encountered.
Wow, meticulous planning. Sounds like they left nothing to chance. But even with a guidebook, there was still a final test, right? The one with the heart and the feather.
That's right. The weighing of the heart ceremony. This was the moment of truth, the ultimate judgment. Picture a scale. The deceased's heart on one side and the feather of Ma'at representing truth and righteousness on the other.
Okay, I'm picturing it. So what if your heart was heavier than the feather?
Well, let's just say the consequence wasn't good. A terrifying creature called Amit, part lion, part hippopotamus, part crocodile, was waiting to devour any heart that failed the test. Eternal oblivion.
Talk about high stakes. It really underlines how important it was to live a good life, according to Matt.
Exactly. A heart weighed down by bad deeds, you face Amit. But if your heart's as light as the feather of Ma'at, well, then you get to enter the field of reeds. Paradise. Eternal life.
So a life well-lived, aligned with math, that was their ticket to paradise.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to that idea. Now, we can't talk about the afterlife without talking about mummies and pyramids. They must tie into preserving the Ka and the Ba.
Absolutely. Without a well-preserved body, there's no vessel for those soul components to return to. Basically, no eternal life.
And mummification wasn't just wrapping someone in linen, was it? It was a whole
Oh,
process.
yeah. Very elaborate. Took weeks to complete. Imagine this. They carefully removed the internal organs and placed them in these special jars.
Wait, those are the canopic jars, right?
Yeah,
With the different animal heads.
exactly. Each jar held a specific organ: lungs, liver, stomach, and intestines. They even had a separate jar for the heart because, well, you remember the weighing of the heart ceremony.
So even in death, each organ had its role.
Okay, what happened after they removed the organs?
Well, next they had to dehydrate the body using a special kind of salt called natron. This is what mummified the body, prevented it from decomposing. Then came the wrapping.
Miles and miles of linen, I imagine, like making the world's most elaborate bandage.
You could say that. They used thousands of yards of linen, carefully wrapping the body, and using resins and perfumes to preserve it. And of course, let's not forget the amulets and charms tucked in with the wrappings. Right, the amulets. To offer magical protection in the afterlife, right? Like warding off evil spirits and helping them navigate the duet.
Exactly, like packing for a very long trip. You know, making sure you have all the essentials, including supernatural safeguards. And all of that culminated in the creation of a sarcophagus, a final resting place fitting their beliefs.
Speaking of resting places, we got to talk about pyramids. Iconic symbols of ancient Egypt and their whole thing with eternal life.
For sure. Pyramids weren't just tombs, they were like huge monuments to immortality, especially for the pharaohs. The sheer scale of those structures, like the Great Pyramid of Giza, it's a testament to their incredible engineering skills and their belief in the pharaoh's eternal power.
Like a giant do not disturb sign for eternity. But didn't they later switch from pyramids to the Valley of the Kings? Why the change?
Pyramids, grand as they were also very noticeable, attracted grave robbers. The Valley of the Kings, hidden tombs carved into cliffs that offered, well, more privacy and security.
Makes sense. Out of sight, out of mind, especially when you're worried about tomb raiders.
Hmm.
But they still decorated the insides of those hidden tombs, right?
Of course they did. In fact, the decorations inside became even more extravagant. Paintings, hieroglyphs, scenes of the afterlife. It's like they brought a piece of paradise into the tomb itself.
So not less extravagant, just a different approach. Still aiming for opulence, just with extra security.
Exactly. And speaking of extravagant tombs, there's the most famous resident of the Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun, King Tut.
Ah, yes, King Tut, legendary tomb. Wasn't it discovered practically untouched?
That's what makes it so special. In 1922, Howard Carter, an archaeologist, he stumbles upon Tutankhamun's tomb, and it's basically untouched. Over 3,000 years. A treasure trove of artifacts, furniture, jewelry, even chariots, all perfectly preserved.
Like stepping back in time. To see all those objects, those clothes, knowing that King Tut himself used them. Incredible discovery.
It was a huge moment for us to understand their burial practices and their beliefs about the afterlife. An amazing glimpse into the lengths they went to prepare for that eternal journey.
What about all those stories about the curse of King Tut? People dying after entering the tomb.
The curse. The story's gotten a bit exaggerated over time, but there were some unfortunate events, like the death of Lord Carnarvon, who funded the dig, but probably just natural causes, not an ancient curse.
Right, coincidences blown out of proportion. But those stories add to the mystery around ancient Egypt.
Definitely. What's truly remarkable is how these beliefs, from thousands of years ago, they still capture our imaginations.
You see it everywhere, in movies, books, even modern funerals.
Mm-hmm.
That desire for eternal life to, transcend our limits, it seems like a very human thing.
It does. The ancient Egyptians, with all their rituals and beliefs, they offer a fascinating window into how one civilization tried to answer these big questions.
Like they were trying to crack the code of immortality. And in a way, they succeeded. Their legacy lives on.
That's a key point. Their goal wasn't just living forever. It was preserving their identity, their achievements, for eternity. And in a way, they achieved that. Their story, their beliefs, they're still here.
It makes you wonder, what will our legacy be? What will we leave behind?
Good question. The Egyptians offer a valuable perspective. It's not just about how long you live, but about living a meaningful life, leaving a positive impact, a legacy that goes beyond time.
This has been an amazing journey. Mummification, pyramids, the duat, But there's still so much more, isn't there?
Absolutely. And we'll pick up right where we left off in the next part of our deep dive. We'll talk about how burial practices changed, the importance of King Tut's tomb, and how these ancient beliefs still affect us today.
Can't wait. We'll be back soon to unravel more of the mysteries of ancient Egypt and their quest for eternal life. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Before we move on, I wanted to circle back to the pyramids for a second. You were asking about the shift to the Valley of the Kings and why they went for those hidden tombs. It wasn't just about, being practical, even though avoiding grave robbers was, well, it was a factor.
There was more to it than protecting the treasure. I'm listening.
Think about the pyramids, symbolically, I mean. Huge structures reaching for the sky, like the pharaoh trying to ascend to the stars to join the cosmic order with the gods. But as their ideas about the afterlife developed, the focus shifted, you see, from that outward display of power to a more inward focus on the soul's journey and the individual's, moral judgment.
So it was a reflection of a deeper, more spiritual understanding of what eternal life actually meant.
Exactly. The Valley of the Kings, hidden away in those cliffs, that symbolized a return to the earth, a symbolic death and rebirth like Osiris. The focus wasn't on earthly power anymore. It was about the individual's journey towards spiritual transformation and achieving harmony with Madat.
That's fascinating. It's like the tombs themselves, they became like metaphors for how their beliefs about the afterlife were changing. So what can we learn from those hidden tombs in the Valley of the Kings?
The Valley of the Kings, it's like a gold mine of information about their funeral practices. We find these incredible depictions of the journey through the duat, the weighing of the heart, scenes of the deceased in the field of reeds. It's like the Book of the Dead, but illustrated,
Yeah.
right there on the tomb walls.
And these paintings, they weren't just decoration, right? They had a purpose.
Oh, absolutely. They were meant to guide and protect the deceased, giving them, instructions and spells for the afterlife. They believed these images had, like, magical power to make sure they had a smooth transition into the eternal realm.
Like they were creating a visual guide, a roadmap for the afterlife.
Yeah, and maybe even more importantly, they were showing off their identity, their values for all time. Remember, the Egyptians were obsessed with preserving not just their bodies, but everything that made them. Their achievements, their social standing, their relationships. These tomb paintings, they were a way of showcasing their lives, their legacies, making sure they weren't forgotten.
So it was about more than just surviving death. It was about making sure their story, their essence, continued on in the afterlife and beyond.
Exactly. And speaking of legacies, we have to talk about, well, the most famous tomb in the Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun's tomb.
Right, King Tut. His tomb was like a time capsule, wasn't it?
Imagine going into a tomb that's been sealed for like over 3,000 years and finding it, well, almost completely untouched. That's what happened when Howard Carter found Tutankhamun's tomb, 1922. Full of everything, everyday stuff to amazing treasures, it gives us this incredible view into the life and death of a young pharaoh.
It must have been amazing, like looking directly into the past. What kind of treasures did they find?
Golden chariots, beautiful jewelry, furniture with intricate carvings, board games, even food containers. Basically everything Tutankhamun might need for a comfortable and stylish afterlife. One of the most amazing archaeological finds ever, I'd say. It gives us so much insight into their culture and their beliefs about the afterlife.
And then there are those infamous stories about the curse of King Tut's tomb. Didn't some people believe that, people who went into the tomb would suffer terrible fates?
Yeah, that's a story that really captured people's imaginations. There were a few untimely deaths connected to the excavation, like Lord Carnarvon, the guy who paid for it all, but most likely just, coincidences, not an ancient curse. The media definitely made it sound more dramatic, but it shows how powerful and mysterious ancient Egypt still is, even now.
It is amazing how those stories still fascinate us. So putting aside the more sensational stories, what can we really learn from King Tut's tomb?
His tomb wasn't just a bunch of riches. It was a carefully crafted expression of their belief system. Every object, every inscription, everything you see on those walls, it all points to their deep desire for eternal life and all the things they did to try to achieve it. It's a unique look into the world of a young pharaoh and what his society did to make sure he had a successful journey into the afterlife.
But Tutankhamun was just one pharaoh. What about, everyday Egyptians? Did they have the same elaborate burials?
Well, regular Egyptians didn't have the money to build pyramids or collect treasures like Tutankhamun, but they still had the same basic beliefs about the afterlife and how important it was to get ready for it. They still did mummification, just on a smaller scale, and they filled their tombs with everyday objects and offerings to help them through the duat.
So that desire for eternal life, it wasn't just for the elite. It was something that everyone in Egyptian society believed in.
Absolutely. The Egyptians, no matter their social status, they all wanted a blissful afterlife, to keep existing in a place where, they could enjoy life without the burdens of being mortal. It was a core part of their culture. It shaped how they saw the world, and it influenced their lives in every way.
It makes you wonder, what did they consider a life well lived? What qualities did they strive for, knowing that Ma was always, watching them, judging them?
That's a great question. It gets to the heart of their moral and spiritual philosophy. They
Yeah.
believed that living according to Ma'at, embracing truth, justice, and cosmic order, that was essential, not just for a good afterlife, but also for a harmonious life here and now.
That's powerful, and it resonates even today. It means that our actions, they have consequences, both in this life and after.
Exactly. And that might be one of the most important things we can learn from ancient Egypt, their emphasis on personal responsibility and how what we do is connected to the whole universe, you could say.
It's a reminder that real immortality, maybe it's not about living forever, but about living a life that matters, a life that leaves the world, a little bit better.
I like that. And maybe that's the real lasting lesson from the ancient Egyptians and their quest for eternal life. It wasn't just about avoiding death. It was about embracing life, living it fully,
Mm.
and leaving behind a legacy that shows, the best of humanity.
It's a timeless message, one that still has meaning, even after all these years. As we wrap up our look into ancient Egypt, it's amazing how relevant their beliefs still feel. They were wrestling with the same big questions we face. What is a good life? What do we want to leave behind? How do our actions affect the world?
And by looking at how they answered these questions, by exploring their beliefs and practices, we get a new perspective on our own lives and the choices we make.
It's been an incredible journey, and I hope our listeners have learned as much as I have. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ancient Egypt and their search for eternal life.
Until next time, may you find inspiration in their pursuit of truth, justice, and a legacy that lasts forever.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on this incredible journey through ancient Egypt's fascination with eternal life. We've covered mummification, pyramids, even the treacherous duat, and of course King Tut's amazing tomb.
Right, and now we're getting to the core of it all, Mahat. Remember, she's not just any goddess. She represents truth, justice, and cosmic order, and she played a crucial role in their quest for eternal life.
You were saying earlier that Mahat wasn't just some abstract idea, but that it was a part of their everyday lives. So what did that actually look like? How did it play out?
Think of Ma'at as the glue that held Egyptian society together. It was in everything, their laws, how they treated each other, even how they understood the natural world. Living according to Ma'at meant, it's at promoting harmony, balance, and righteousness in every single part of your life.
So it wasn't just about being like a good person generally. It was about actively upholding this cosmic principle. How did they actually do that?
Well, their legal system, for one, was really rooted in this idea of Ma'at. Judges, they were like representatives of Ma'at, you see. And their decisions, their rulings were all about restoring balance and order when someone did something wrong and messed up that harmony.
So justice wasn't about punishing the guilty. It was about restoring this cosmic balance. Pretty deep stuff.
It is. And it went beyond just the courts. Everything from how they treated their families to, how they interacted with strangers was guided by these principles of Ma'at. Honesty, fairness, compassion, respect for elders. These were all seen as essential virtues for upholding Ma'at.
So their entire society was built on this foundation of ethical and moral behavior.
Exactly. And they believed that if you went against these principles, even in, what might seem like small ways,
Yeah.
you could disrupt the balance of Ma'at. And that could have, serious consequences, not just for you, but for the whole community.
Makes you wonder, were they always worried about messing up, offending Mod? Was it like having Big Brother watching over them constantly?
Not really. They believed in divine judgment for sure, but the focus was more on on trying to live a good life, making choices that, that contributed to that overall harmony, not messing it up. It was about aligning yourself with this cosmic principle, making it a part of, well, a part of who you are.
So it wasn't just about avoiding punishment. It was about aspiring to something bigger, a life with real meaning.
Exactly. And this brings us back to, their obsession with eternal life. By living according to Ma'at, they believed they were guaranteeing a good judgment in the afterlife, but also creating a legacy that would last.
Right, because their actions, their deeds, they were contributing to this lasting cosmic order. It's like their lives had a ripple effect,
Yeah.
affecting the universe even after they were gone.
Precisely. And this idea of legacy, it wasn't just about, grand gestures or heroic things. It was about those everyday choices, the little acts of kindness, how they contributed to their families and communities. All of that, they believed, played a part in upholding Ma'at and keeping that harmony in the universe going.
Powerful reminder that even the small things we do can have a lasting impact. It's not just about living a long time, it's about living a life that makes a difference, that leaves the world a little bit better.
I like that. And maybe that's the most important lesson we can take from the ancient Egyptians and their quest for eternal life. It wasn't just about escaping death. It was about embracing life, living it fully, and leaving behind a legacy that reflects, well, the best of humanity.
That's a message that never gets old, does it? It really sticks with you, even after thousands of years. As we wrap up our deep dive into ancient Egypt, it's amazing how relevant their beliefs still are. They were dealing with the same big questions we ask today. What's a life well lived? What do we want to leave behind? How do our actions, shape the world around us?
And by looking at how they answered those questions, by exploring their beliefs, their practices, we can gain a new perspective on our own lives and the choices we make, right?
It's been an amazing journey, and I really hope our listeners have found it as eye-opening as I have.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ancient Egypt and their never-ending quest for eternal life. It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Until next time, may you find inspiration in their pursuit of, well, truth, justice, and a legacy that echoes through time.